What does care look like when nobody has the language for it? That's the question at the center of a new children's book called The River of Caregiving. And it's the question that I'm bringing to author Jocelyn Chung and illustrator Sarah Gonzales today. We're going into the intergenerational piece, the cultural specificity, the grief that lives inside caregiving, and what it means to make something beautiful out of all of it. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I related so much to the book. I felt like I was looking at pictures of my own family, and I haven't gotten a chance to read your first book, When Love is More Than Words, but from doing my research, it looks like it came from a very personal experience. I'm curious what that experience was like and what inspired you to start with the first book and then continue telling the story and start with the second and come out with the second book.
When Love is More Than Words came out of a time when I was caregiving for both of my grandparents. So during the pandemic, they both were diagnosed with cancer within about a week or so of each other. And then I was working full time, quit that job, and then became full time in caretaking for them. And, when I was at the hospital one day with my grandpa, my akong, I brought in some fruit. He was watching tennis on my iPad, and it was like so silent. Just like, the sounds of beeping in the hospital room accompanying us. But I just started thinking in that moment, like, we're not saying a word, but there's like so much love that's shared between us. And then, so from there, I always bring like a journal with me wherever I go. And I just started jotting down like what would then become like the bare blueprint of this first book of When Love is More Than Words, and just how love can be communicated in ways beyond just saying I love you, but it can be in all these different ways that are quite silent as well. And so I loved that book. It came out of a really like Taiwanese American, Asian American context of sharing how this is like a shared experience for many of our families. But I wanted to expand upon that within the second book, because there's a portion in the first book, which behind me, for those who can see my video, there's an image of one of the spreads from the book, which Julia Kuo, my illustrator in the first book, drew, which was like the mom feeding the grandmother. And in that scene, I talk about how, when we care for our elders, all of us are strong. And so that portion of the story I wanted to expand upon, because caregiving is an increasing reality for people around the world. And I wanted to kind of hone in on how caregiving is this exchange of love and care and, throughout people's lives, and what that can look like even when people are separated. That's kind of where it came from.
That's beautiful. What have you learned, Sarah, throughout this process of working with Jocelyn about caregiving, if anything?
Caregiving is, it's like so much love and sacrifice. There's, it's really, really deep. Like, I think it's the title of the book, right? Like it's really a river. A river is, sometimes it's shallow, from the things that we see, like that's just there. And then, but it goes like beyond like what's on the surface, kind of like a river, and it like flows. So, just like from reading Jocelyn's manuscript, like I knew I had to be a part of this, because like in my own family, like within my relatives, like I thought of like my cousin Samantha, who's like one of my dearest cousins, and like her mom, so my tita Gemma, and her mom's and grandma, so that's like my mommy Letty, she's my great aunt. And I thought about how like they lived together under one roof. Like sometimes we'd have sleepovers at their place, and though like when you're a kid you don't realize that that's going on around you, like deep down that there's love there. I think though that like as an adult and like talking to her now, talking to my cousin Samantha about like her experiences, it's really complex. All the emotions that you feel, like, I think it's beautiful that, this book that you've written, Jocelyn, like touches on like the love Because sometimes when you're in it, it's, the love is there, but it's also a lot of pain, that you feel. So, I think, as like to kind of echo what like Jocelyn said, a lot of like Asian American families, like all families that are going through caregiving can relate to this. And like I've learned so much just from like reading the manuscript, even like just going on like your feed, Chris, of like the stories that you've shared with your Lola, and then talking with like my family about like experiences that we've had. Like even though like I've never personally experienced caregiving myself, like I see it within my relatives, and just to be able to illustrate those experiences, it means a lot. And yeah,
it's beautiful. I think the detail of a child translating for a grandparent is very specific to immigrants, and that's one that I know very well. I'm curious, Jocelyn, what your experience was with that, and why you decided to include it in the book.
Yeah, I mentioned in my author's note that I grew up in a family that had 4 generations like living together. So with my great grandma, my mom, and myself. And from that, I think there's this perspective of like daughters that I got to see. Like I saw my grandma as a daughter. I saw my mom as a daughter, saw myself as a daughter, a great granddaughter, a granddaughter. And I shadowed my mom when I was younger, going to different doctor's appointments that she went to with my paternal grandma. And my paternal grandma had many, many doctor's appointments every week. And so I would just tag along and listen and just watch this very natural exchange of which felt seamless at the time. But now thinking about it, my mom was like navigating so many different things in her head. She's like trying to get the symptoms and the emotional weight of things from my grandma. My grandma also was going through depression at the time too. So even like trying to figure out her symptoms of depression and getting like depression medication for her. And then translating that to the doctor's asking follow-up. My mom is like picking up what is needed to be translated back to her, even synthesizing some medical terms that she might have not known at the time either. And I saw her just like learn on the fly how to translate these things and into this seamless communication back and forth, where my grandma felt seen. The doctor felt like he was, checking all the boxes of what he needed to do to take care of my grandma. And my mom, mediating all the emotions in the middle while also keeping me entertained as a child, just sitting in the hospital. And so watching that growing up, it felt very seamless. Then when my sister put it, like at the time, she was like, well, it's your turn now. When my grandparents got sick, and it was kind of like the tap on the shoulder or the pass of the baton. And so I felt a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of fear of like, what are the things that might get lost in translation? My grandparents spoke enough English, but there's certain things of explaining pain or symptoms, or, how long has a tumor been there? How does it feel inside your body? Different forms of treatment, presenting them to her in a way that she can have agency to decide for herself rather than me making that decision for her. Like all of those nuances of navigating those appointments that became my reality. But I really have to attribute that to my mom and my sister, who I watched growing up, doing this without any guidelines. My mom's also an immigrant. Like she also navigated the language herself. And so me as a native speaker of English, I had that upper hand, but I got to have like an up close masterclass from my mom. And then throughout the years when my grandparents were both going through chemo, through treatment, it felt seamless, scary, lonely, overwhelming at times. But I became that mouthpiece for my grandma, my grandpa, and then also the messenger to my aunts and uncles once the appointment is done, to synthesize what happened, give updates, make sure everyone has input, all of that. So yeah, it was a big part of my life. And it's strange. It's now that it is no longer, there's this like strange, empty hole of this like tool skill set that I had worked really hard to kind of build up and finesse well. And now it's like no longer being used, or at least for now, like it's kind of sitting in the back. And so that's a strange feeling, but I think seeing Sarah's beautiful illustrations on that page of the beautiful hands that she did, even the little small thing of like sitting on a hospital bench waiting and then they're like eating some fruit, it really like brought me back, but also gave me this sense of like of the comfort and like togetherness. Like every single page Sarah illustrated so much sense of coziness and warmth. Like there's no sense of loneliness on every page, and I really have to like attribute that to her, because it can be very lonely, but she painted it in a way that was so communal. And so that's like all on you. Like you did such an amazing job being able to do that. And I felt like it held me because of that.
What's so interesting about hearing you describe how deep these, I mean, I think what you're describing only took up 2 pages of the book. It's in maybe less than, I don't know, 20 words, but the fact that you guys were able to write something so simple, so understandable for children, and to have an illustration that says so much, I think it's a testament to, one, your guys' storytelling skills, and how beautiful storytelling can be when you can get it right, and you can show more that you can show more than you can tell. Because again, what you described, Jocelyn, there's so many immigrant families that are going to listen to this that know exactly the things that you were describing. But for a child to read this book and to see those 2 specific pages of somebody translating for a grandparent, it's going to resonate so much with them in a way that they can't even fully understand in the moment. But they know deep down, this is my family that I'm seeing represented in a book. I just thought it was super fascinating that it goes so much deeper than just like 20 words on a page. So kudos to both of you for really knocking it out the park. I'm curious what your guys' working relationship has been like in creating this book.
So we literally met for the first time like on FaceTime, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, like
right
around
before the book came out. Like, yeah, we had never talked before. I've been a really big fan of Sarah's through all of her absolutely beautiful work that she has done. And when I wrote this book, I was like, immediately, I need Sarah to be on this book. And I hope that she says yes. And she did. But we hadn't talked at all. So yeah, Sarah, what was your experience? I just came in as a fan and I was like, oh, please, I hope that Sarah will illustrate for us.
Well, it means so much that you love my work, and it like spoke to you, and it I just feel like really blessed that like this manuscript came along, and like as soon as I read it, I was like, I need to be a part of this, especially just with like being able to relate to it as like an immigrant as well, and like seeing my family and extended family like go through like caregiving, and even if it's not exactly caregiving, but it's like adjacent, where it's like we're together as a family during like whatever parties or just simple like dinners or just like family picnics and such. It meant a lot to like draw from like personal experiences and to like figure out ways like beyond the words to show like the love and like the like, because that's at like the heart of the book. And
I know for Sarah, like something that you mentioned, which you totally should talk about too, is like your Taiwanese friend and how you reference some stuff with him, but then also like some photos that you referenced or Easter eggs in the book.
I'll get into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, so like while we like during like the process of like making a picture book, typically like the author's process is like separate from the illustrator. So and I understand that to an aspect to like respect each other's like creative processes. But with that, I was like, okay, if we're not going to have like face-to-face meetings until like after, I'm going to do some of my own digging. And so like, I went on Jocelyn's Instagram. I'm so thankful that she like shared like her experiences of like caregiving for her family and her mom's experiences, and like sharing all these family photos of like all the like the lunches or dinners or like the family gatherings that you had, like seeing all like the generations of like your cousins and nieces and nephews. So yeah, I did feel like a bit of a creep, but like it was needed, and I was like, I need to draw from like the source of inspiration. So I took a lot of screenshots. I was like, oh, maybe I can put like some of these family photos that were in like the background of some of these photos that you took, and then put them in like another scene. I think that was like another thing that I drew on as like a motif, is like family photos. I think like, especially like growing up for us, like we're like in the Filipino diaspora, like the families like back home in the Philippines, but we would have like photos of like our titas and titos and our lolos and lolas that were back there. And because they weren't with us in the present, like they could still be around us like through photographs. So like in the spread where they're like sending a box back, I know like my dad did that for like the family back in the Philippines. He would like send pictures of like my nephews and my niece, so that they like, because sometimes we don't like, we live far away, right? And it's not a luxury to just like go back often. So having like a balik bayan or like a box that you send back, it means a lot. So yeah, and I also had like my Taiwanese friend James. He was like a big inspiration too. He shared his photos from his trips to Taiwan, and told me stories about like his own family experiences as well. So I was able to draw on like the Taiwanese culture in that way. But like also with that, like there's a lot of parallels with like Filipino culture as well, with like how important family is. So it was like a good collaboration in a way, even if we weren't always directly in contact.
I think it's insane that you guys have met for the first time 3 weeks ago and you guys were able to make something like this. How does that even, do they separate authors and illustrators by design, or is that just how the process worked for this?
So a lot of people don't know that, but that's usually what they do. Unless you come into the project together, like as a pair, you're like, oh, we are presenting and selling this manuscript and these illustrations together. They keep us separate, and we're not allowed to talk to each other. And again, it's like what Sarah said, like it's trying to preserve like our creative process and creative freedom and agency. And so that there's not too much back and forth where an author maybe like micromanages an illustrator or something. But I do feel like at many times I was like, oh, I just want to reach out and talk to her. And there would be many times where like it would just come through my email. I would just get like a ping in my inbox, and it was like, oh, Sarah's work in progress, and like here's some sketches. And then I'd be like, oh, it's amazing. Please tell her that like I love it. And I don't know how Sarah got that back on the other end, if she actually saw my words or someone else synthesized it. But yeah, it's kind of a weird thing in the picture book world where they kind of keep us separate, and they say not till it comes out.
Interesting. So you can't give any input during the process. Like
Sarah sent like sketches of like different covers, for instance, like different covers that she was coming up with. And I got to share, okay, like I like this one the most, or, you know, they would every once in a while be like, what do you think of this? But other than that, yeah, that's all. It's all through third party. So I'm like telling it to someone who's then telling it to her. You must have so much trust in the process. I mean, I guess you don't have a choice, right? This is the way that the world is.
for a topic as connected to you as caregiving is, outside looking in, if that was me, it would be so hard for me to not, because I'm a micromanager at heart. I like to be a part of the process. And with this book that my cousin and I have been working on, we have been very involved in all aspects of the book, down to what the pages are going to feel like. So I can't even imagine for you, Jocelyn, to have such a special story like caregiving, where it includes your family, and to have such an amazing metaphor as the river, to then just let it go metaphorically, and just let Sarah go.
Yeah, I think it was, well, one, I trusted Sarah. Like I wanted her. I told my agent, like, it's either her or no one else. Like, I don't have anyone else on my list. Like, literally, I didn't have anyone else. So, like, I was like, it's either her or I'm going to have to, like, search for someone, I guess. But I trusted her because I've seen her storytelling before, and I'm such a fan of her books. Like, I collect her books because I love her books. So I knew that I was putting it into her hands, and from afar, even though I hadn't met her, like, I trusted her storytelling, and I trusted her voice, and like the warmth that she like exudes from every page that she puts her hands on. And then also, like, I'm also a designer and I'm also an illustrator myself. And so because of that, I also understand that, like, the greatest thing you can give to a creative is just like agency to do it on their own and trust. And I as a creative hate micromanagement. Like, if someone's like pixel pushing everything that I do, I'm like, oh gosh, like, why'd you put me on this project then? So I also knew that, like, part of empowerment and part of the collaboration that I could give from afar was to just be like, hey, just take it and run with it. And so I really did just trust her, and I trusted that it would come to pass. And the first time I saw the sketches, I started crying, and I was like, oh, this is exactly, it was black and white, and it was just like your pen sketches and pencil sketches. Yeah. But if you have them, cool.
Yeah, I have them handy, actually.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Just quickly.
Let's go.
So these are the early sketches. I was like working with grid paper to just box it out. But you can see, like, early sketches, like, things have changed. Like, it's now a picnic scene. But again, like, I wanted to show the importance of hands when you're caregiving, like washing fruit, and the motif of water as well. And like, this was another scene that I wanted to put earlier on, of like the grandkids giving grandma a hug. But so yeah, beautiful. things change, right? So, it's fun to kind of see like the early process of it. But I think working like this, like it's, seeing everything beside each other, like storyboarding, and because we're using like the motif of a river, I wanted everything to flow. So yeah, that was one page, and then there is like another one, right? So like there's a lot of exploration that goes on, and I'm so thankful that you trusted me with your words, and to have it as like a jumping point, because like I was able to just go off like from like the words that you wrote, like the different vignettes, like the memories that you drawed upon in your words, and like the importance of family. So being able to like show that and explore that through like just small thumbnails was so much fun. This is like my favorite part of the process, and I'm sure for Jocelyn as well, it's like, as a designer and illustrator, like sometimes the process is like more meaningful than the actual end result, even though like everything's so important. But yeah, process is everything.
And when you receive the project, Sarah, for the first time, do you only have the manuscript in your hands, or do you get a little bit more than that? So
for this, it like depends on the book. Like, to kind of go back on what we were talking about with like the writer's process and the illustrator's process, like sometimes there's like I'll be given a package, for instance, if there's like any specific like research and stuff that I need to get into, like sometimes the editor will provide like reference images, but typically though it's usually just the manuscript. Like in this case, all I received was Jocelyn's words, so it's like it's kind of it's one of the most scary parts of illustrating a book is like, okay, it's just words and then like a blank page. This is crazy. You just have to like think it up. It's really just like there's a lot of drawing that happens, but honestly, it's so much staring at a piece of paper is like a good chunk of my time, and just like imagining like different possibilities for each spread, because like there's so many things that you can show, and like I'll always think back to like my personal experiences, and then like coming from like a design background as well, you'll think of like the main principles of like hierarchy, scale, like, okay, so if I wanted to show like a moment, like, and of like the hands, like that'll take up a good portion of the composition. And then thinking about like the symbolism of a river and the imagery, I knew like I wanted everything to kind of flow together as like different vignettes. So yeah, this
is beautiful. You knocked it out of the park, Sarah. Just amazing job. I think the way that you were able to illustrate the river throughout was so beautiful. I'm curious, Jocelyn, how you even came up with the metaphor of the river and how that came, like how it all came to be.
I mean, I think the original idea was like bodies of water separating us, but also connecting us. So this idea that like every time my family flew back to Taiwan, there's this like rush of connection, but also when we go back, there's this like longing and wishing to be able to be connected and be near, even though we're separated like by an ocean. Like that idea kept coming back. My mom told me a story once of when she first immigrated. She was like standing at the beach in California and like looking across the Pacific Ocean and then like sobbing. And she was just like, why am I here? Like all my life and my family and like my friends, like everyone is on the other side of this. And she wrote it down, and like my mom kept a journal as well. And she talked to me about that. And I thought about this idea that like water can be this thing that separates us, but also like the nature of rivers is that it connects. And so I think after the idea was like, okay, it's not an ocean, it's a river. Like all the characteristics of a river kind of write itself, like, you know, that it like can connect multiple like bodies of water together, that it can trickle into like a stream. It helps move waste along. It helps move and promote biodiversity. Like it carves out new paths. It's like there's so many different ways that it just was like, oh, it just writes itself. It just makes sense. And I love the way that Sarah like made that consistent on every page. Like whether or not there was like physical water, like there was like steam, and the steam flowed like water across the page. And so, yeah, it came from a place of like this pain point with my mom that I learned, much later in life, of her experience of immigrating and separation, but then kind of turned into this idea of like water can also be the symbolism that connects us together.
It's such an it's so good, Jocelyn, that I'm upset that I didn't think of the idea first. Because you're right, it writes itself. I'm curious if when this idea came to mind, I know it was inspired by your mother. Were you excited, or were you like, yeah, that's it, let's run with this?
Oh, I was super excited. I mean, this is 4 years ago now. Like I started writing this in 2022. And we're in 2026 now. So this is like a long time ago. I was in the thick of it when I was writing. So like it was my reality. And so it once it clicked into place, I was like, oh, this makes the rest of explaining a lot easier. My issue with writing kids' books is always that there's only so many words you can use, and that some words that I use are a little bit too like poetic or like too high level for a child to understand. So it's always like, okay, bringing it back to reality, bringing it back to a concept that like kids can understand, in a way that's like simple and tangible. And so something like a river, I was like, oh, this works. Like this makes sense. Kids have seen rivers. This is accessible for everyone to understand. So I was really excited. And again, because I was in the thick of caregiving, like the rest of it really just wrote itself.
Yeah, I love it. Sarah, for you, when you are getting into the process of illustrating something like this? I know you talked a lot about drawing from your own experiences. Is there a lot of pressure on you to make sure that you get the vision right? Or do you feel like you're in flow, no pun intended, of just like creating all of this?
I think to go back to the beginning of like when I received the manuscript, it's like, it's so daunting, to just like kind of come up with the visuals just from words. But like, I think it really did flow naturally just from like Jocelyn's writing, right? Like the whole idea of like the metaphor of a river and how it like connects bigger bodies of water and everything like is interconnected. I think like I love that. Like I think it's so brilliant that you were able to like draw on that, Jocelyn, through your writing, and like everything just like is so beautifully intertwined, like all the memories and like connecting families and all the like experiences, and even like the memories. Like I loved how you tapped into like the present and the past, but then also like the future, right? So like it was like such a fun experience to like figure out, how do I convey a memory, for instance, like, but also like show the present, right? So I have it here handy, like even in like a scene like this, where it's the present of like showing the hands, feeling the water, if it's like the right temperature. Like that doesn't have to be said through words. You can tell that just like when you're experiencing anything, like giving, like, even if I'm like giving my nieces or nephews a bath, you always like check the temperature, to see if it feels right. It's a very intimate moment, but like things like this that start from the writing, you can like tap into with like the imagery. And then it's like, again, like I'm using like the organic like shapes and waves like that kind of like flow throughout the book. And like it always starts with the words, right? Like they're talking about a memory here, but then it's like, how do I show like a moment in time that has happened that connects to the present? And like that's because of like Jocelyn, though. Like that started from your experiences and how you were able to like tap into that with the writing. And then from there, just like I was able to like come up with these things from memories of like my childhood and like things that I experience now. So
it's like such a small detail, but I love that in the scenes where there's like a present and past, like side by side, like even that the mom has like the same hairstyle in the past and then as a kid, because then the tie-in comes in more clear, like, oh, she's the same girl, like that's her. And I've noticed even in sharing this book with my nieces and nephews, like they point that out too, that, oh, she has a braid. And it's like, oh yeah, that's a braid. But it's so small, but it makes the connection for the kids too. It's like, oh, it's the same person. It's just over time. Because when you're a kid, like the only thing that matters is like tomorrow and like maybe at most like the week. But other than that, you don't think about the future like that. And that concept is so foreign. But I love that you were able to tie that in just like a small way. It's like, oh, you grow up. And then this is what can happen when you grow up. Yeah.
There's so many layers to this. I didn't even realize checking the temperature of the water. And as soon as you said that, I immediately thought of my grandmother, where, whenever she would take a shower or we would have to do a towel bath, it was such a natural thing for my mom and I to do. And there's so many, I think it's beautiful that there are so many layers. My favorite spread, I don't know if that's even the right way to talk about the book, but my favorite 2 pages of this book is this right here, because this is my family in a picture. Like I'm probably going to just tape this to the wall because like this is my family. I'm curious, Jocelyn, what it was like. You say you grew up in a house with 4 generations. I thought I had a big family, but 4 generations is next level. What was that like for you?
This is, for the record, this is also my favorite page too. And I will also be taping this to my wall. Yeah, this is my favorite page. There's just so many things happening. And I feel like every single time I look at it, I notice something different, which is one of my favorite parts about kids' books. And again, that's to your credit, Sarah, that like the level of detail, even down to like the seeds and the fruit, are like visible. It's just so that you can distinguish what things are. And in this scene, Sarah also like looked through my photos of like what our family brings for potlucks. So like even that sushi box, that's like the exact box my mom always makes sushi in and brings it to every gathering. Like that's her sushi. So then when my cousins saw this book for the first time, they're like, "Oh, it's Auntie Kathy's sushi." Like pointed it out because they could see it. So those are like the special things that she put in. Same with, she only just recently, sorry, Sarah, I'm just like putting you on blast by how
let's do it.
Like, even the balloons in the background, I was like, "Oh, did you reference like your family? Like, how did you decide like what friends?" And she was like, "Those are your family photos."
In abstract small form.
She was like, I shaded them all from different photos of your grandparents and your family. And so like, she was like, I have a reference for each one. And I just like abstract, like colored it in. And I started looking at it more closely and I was like, I know what photos these are.
Wow.
Just from that, which is crazy. So again, like the level of detail is amazing. Back to your question though, 4 generations. Yeah, it is like absolute complete loving chaos all the time whenever we were together. My grandma is one of 10 kids. And my great grandma came to the US at 75. They were really pioneers of their own time. They came on their own. And my grandma and my mom were back in Taiwan and they were like, "Dude, grandma's crazy. Like grandma and grandpa are crazy. They want to go to the US at like 75 on their own." And then one by one, everyone's like, "Well, if she's there, like we're all going to come over." And so little by little, about half of the siblings, my grandma's siblings, came over. And then obviously all of the kids have kids and the kids have kids again. And we all grew up on this huge, in this huge family where, back in Taiwan, my family were all dairy farmers. So like every summer, all of the cousins would come back to the house and they would spend the whole summer like on the farm together. And they kind of recreated that in Southern California for us. So my mom's generation, every summer we went camping together or went on a trip together. And that was something that they really instilled in us. Like we gather around Mother's Day. We gather around like Atzo, which is great grandma's birthday. We gather around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, New Year's. Like we see each other in the summer. Like those were all gathering points and it was just the norm. A lot of them also like went to the same church too. And like we're all elders and stuff. So it's like just every part of life is like done together. And yeah, I think that when people see like photos of my family, which is like well over 130 people now at this point, they're like, "Oh my God, that's like so many people. Like, do you even know everyone?" And like, not only do I know them, like they're my friends and they're like my community, they're my village. I just got married 2 months ago now. And like when everyone came together, it's like people are like, "Oh my gosh," they're like, "Oh, the bride's family, come to the front." And there's like this swarm. It's like half the wedding is like my family. And even in that, I was like, "Oh, this is the village. Like these are my people." And so it was so much fun. And obviously like every family has its issues and like its things. But because of that, like I just saw caregiving all the time because my great grandma lived to 108. And so all of her kids, my grandma's generation, were taking care of her. And, at the same time, taking care of younger kids too. So like there was so much overlap of caregiving happening. And again, that understanding that like everyone is a daughter or a son in some way and caregiving. So
what a privilege it is to be surrounded by a village. And I don't know if you can relate also, Sarah, but I guess I could speak generally. Filipinos always find every excuse to gather, whether it's Thanksgiving or we just made it through another week. It's time to gather and hang out with each other. We always find a reason to hang out and be in community because I think we just see I think it's deep rooted in us to be in community. I believe we are meant to be in community, and that this life is not meant to be spent alone. And I think you guys have done such an amazing job of showing that throughout this book. And I know my upbringing, being around so many family members and living with both of my grandmas, maternal and paternal grandmas, which I tell that to people all the time, and they're like, "You lived with both of your grandmas? You know both of them?" I'm like, "Yeah, we live in the same house." But to me, that was just normal growing up, and that's something that I want to continue with my family. I literally just, me and my wife just bought a home, and it's right next door to my parents' house, and people are always so surprised by that, but I want my children to experience the childhood that I had, where we have many generations under one roof, where we have gatherings for the sake of gatherings. I'm curious for both of you if that is something that you are conscious about in continuing your lives.
I think for me, like, I'm thinking about it more like than ever, because like I think about how like my parents, they immigrated to Saudi Arabia from the Philippines, and they lived there for 15 years. So they, in a way, it's like they almost kind of isolated a little bit. So like, but then after that, like after living in Saudi, we immigrated to Canada in Alberta, and we were like lived in Edmonton for like the first 5 years. And like we had to like reset up, like you kind of have to like re-ground yourself. And like, thankfully at the same time, like a lot of my cousins, my aunts and uncles, they moved as well. Like I only ever got to meet my tatay, my grandfather. Sadly, I didn't get to meet like my, like paternal grandparents, nor like my maternal grandmother, but, like he immigrated with us too. So like we all just kind of like immigrated around the same time. So I can like relate to both of you like very deeply with that, and like having to uproot and then reroute somewhere else. It's really tough. Like I have conversations now with like my parents about like everything they kind of like sacrificed, and like the things that the difficulties that they went through. But like as a kid, you don't really understand that until like much later in life, when you're like more curious about like their journey. And like like now, like I like from Edmonton, we also like my parents, we moved, like I have three other siblings, so there's 6 of us. We moved to Calgary, and so it's like another jump. So and then like we lived there for a while. I went to school there, and then I moved to Montreal, where I am now. It's like I always like feel like I'm jumping around, and it makes me think about like my childhood, like in Edmonton and Calgary. Like thankfully those cities were like close together, but like just the upbringing of like being close to family. Like I would want to, like, if I ever had a family, like I would want the same for like our kids to like have that support. Like my cousins are like my best friends. It's funny, like we go to school and stuff, and like I make new friends and best friends, but like that unconditional love of like your cousins kind of being like around the same age as you, and like that's the same for like our parents, and like how there's like 10 siblings of them. Like I have so many aunts and uncles, and like everything is just so interconnected and weaved, and it's like I can't help but feel like, I really miss that. Like, I think as an artist, it's tough because like, it's like the process is like very isolating, is very, individual. So these are things I'm like thinking about more and more, and thinking about my parents getting older too. So yeah, that's like my long-winded answer, but I think it's so important to like have a like family like be there for you, even if like we're not in the same city. Just always having some form of connection is so important.
Yeah, something I'm constantly thinking about. Like the center of gravity for our family is like Taipei, and then Southern California, like specifically Orange County. And so everyone kind of lives in a radius around there. Like the Taiwan family all lives in a radius around Taipei, and then like the US family all lives in a radius around Orange County. And so there's like the pools of the center of gravity of like gatherings always happen in those two places. yeah, I'm like thinking through a few things, like, yeah, what you said, Sarah, about like your cousins being your best friends. Like, yeah, my cousins are also my best friends. They're the people that I'm in like the most contact with all the time. They were my bridesmaids. They're the people I go to for advice. They're the people I want to hang out with all the time. And we're all kind of spread out right now because we're all like on our own side quests of our corporate careers and, you know, like chasing dreams, and like everyone's kind of spread out, but our parents and the grandparents that are left are still in Southern California and in Taiwan. And so I think that there's this pool that we all like come back. We come back really often. Like even my cousin Claire, she lives in Boston, or she now lives in New York. She was in Boston, but she came back so often that everyone was like, I forgot you live on the East Coast. Because she just was like always coming back, and people were like, why? And even to her, she's like, because my family's there. Like, of course I'm going to keep coming back. Like whatever the price, I'm going to make it happen because like my family is there. And I think about like now as I'm like thinking forward with my husband of like family building, family planning, like Chris, the life that you're building with your wife is, when I told my husband what you guys are doing, he was like, oh man, that's the dream. Like, that's like, that would be the goal, like to figure out how to live close by. Like my husband's sister just bought a house next to, my husband's parents too. So they're also like a 5-minute walk away. And like, again, there's like these new centers of gravity for the family as it's expanding and two families coming together. All of those things, yeah, constantly thinking about it, thinking about how we want to include that going forward. Like I want, even if we're like now the 5th generation from my great grandma, like I want them to all still know each other as cousins. Like they are still each other's people. And so I hope that to be able to continue that, you know, even things with like language is really important. And I feel like a connection back to our grandparents too. Like I only spoke in Taiwanese Hokkien with my grandparents, and that's a language that's also kind of like disappearing in Taiwan also. And so I think I even told my mom, like, when I have kids, I only want you to speak to them in Taiwanese. And like to my mother-in-law, she speaks Teochew. And I was like, I only want you to speak to them in that so that they understand both, and that there's that ancestral connection that they'll have back to the people who are no longer here too. So, you know, all the different nuances, trying to figure out what the centers of gravity are. But I think for me, the wedding was like my dream come true, because it was both sides of the family coming together for the first time in like 20 years, like all at once, not just like one at a time, like everyone at the same time. And it was so much fun. And we just like hung out nonstop till like 2 a.m. every day. And it was so fun. And I was like, man, if this was every day of my life, this would be awesome. Everyone did it all the time. But yeah, that's the diasporic experience, right? Like longing, togetherness, and then longing again. So
I think that I relate so much to the language piece. I haven't been that as straightforward to my parents of speaking to my children, my future children, in Kapampangan, which is the language that we speak, which is also a dying language. I recently went to the Philippines and realized that children are not being taught this language anymore because it's being outpaced by English and Tagalog. And not even Tagalog is slowly, which is the national language of the Philippines, that is slowly dying, because there are many Filipinos that were born and raised in the Philippines that don't even speak the language, which to me sounds it sounds insane, because you were born and raised in the Philippines, and yet you don't speak the language that most people from here speak, which is a whole isolating experience in itself. But I think it's beautiful that you want to maintain that with your family. And I'm curious if there was anything in this book with language, with your culture, that you had to fight to keep in.
This manuscript definitely went through a lot of edits and changes. I think that a big part of the first version was there was a lot of Taiwanese phrases in this book that I then removed. A big reason for that was that I didn't want it to be too much of a barrier, in the same way that it wasn't necessarily a barrier in When Love Is More Than Words, but in that first book, there was enough phrases in there that intimidated some people. where they wouldn't read it, or they would be like, oh, this is like an Asian story. So like there's just some like aspect of it that became a little bit more intimidating. And so in this, I was just like, caregiving already is an underrepresented subject in picture books and for kids. I wanted to feel authentically Taiwanese and true to my family story, while also not inhibiting someone from picking it up who needs to feel seen in their caregiving journey. So like things in here that I kept, like names of certain things, like obviously ama is the first word that you see in the beginning of the book. My ama tells me that in our family, where is it? My ama told me that in our family, our care for one another flows like a river. So that was specific. I wanted to keep it in and not translate it within, like people could just pick up from context clues that means grandma.
Yeah.
Another one for akong, like you can tell through context clues and Sarah's beautiful illustrations that means grandpa. Another one with aku, which just means uncle. Like that was inspired by my actual uncle who caregave for his dad who just passed away less than a year ago. That I wanted to keep in because that is specifically him. So there's things like that, but I think also I trusted that Sarah would fill in like the rest of the cultural context through the pictures, and that it didn't need to be just through like language or adding in certain phrases that might trip up a young reader to not know what to say or be distracted from the rest of the story. So there's things like that were changed just to kind of lower the barrier of entry for people and for young readers. But yeah, I think other than that, it did feel like there was less pushback in this book. There was more welcome. It was like, oh, I haven't read a story like this, or like, oh, this story is going to like touch so many people. We're so excited for it. So I didn't feel as much pushback as I did maybe my first book.
I'm curious for you, Sarah, when you are illustrating, do you see any pushback from the publisher or from anybody when you're going through the process of crafting these illustrations?
I think overall, like it's like I do have quite a bit of like creative freedom, but I also want to respect like the culture as well. Like with Taiwanese culture, for instance, in this case, like, but with that, like, since it centers around a Taiwanese family, I did want to pay homage to that by like, that's why I like looked at Jocelyn's photos, and like, I'm grateful that she like shared her experiences on there. And like, even just chatting with my Taiwanese friend James about like his own experiences and him sharing those photos, like I was still able to, like find connections. And like, I do think like Taiwanese culture is it parallels with Filipino culture as well. And especially with like family dynamics. And, honestly, like sometimes I think about like, while I was illustrating this, like Jocelyn's first book with, love is more than words. So I think like, yes, we can show it through the text, but it's like making sure that through the visuals, we show that through, actions. And I know like, for instance, like cooking is such a big, experience that we're shown love through. Like I have, memories of like my tatai, like my grandpa, like cooking for me. Like I was a picky eater, but weird thing was like I would eat tripe. Like that's like cow stomach lining, and it's like, yeah. Okay, but when he made me that was like a memory of him that like I hold dear. So like showing like the close-ups of like here, like Agu making the congee, and that for us it's like arroz caldo or like lugao, and like just such that dish is like it's always the answer when you're like feeling some sort of way, right? Kanji is it, because you can also like add so many toppings with it too, and like
So true.
it's big part of like rice is a big part of Asian culture, so like having that in there, and even like tea in like Taiwan is huge as well, so like showing like the pouring of the tea as well, just through like little details. I think it was like important to respect the culture in that sense, and like it's also through these actions it makes the whole experience of like caregiving kind of feel a little universal, because it's not just like the hard things, it's also like the little things, the details, the simple things of just like, even in that family scene, just like, you know, everyone's kind of doing their own thing in some ways. Sometimes they're doing things together, but like in a sense everyone is just there being together.
I love that you, towards the end of the book, Jocelyn, that you include loss and death without saying death. And I'm curious how you navigated that section of the book and how you made it palatable for a children's book.
Oh, you know what? Now that you're calling that out, that is a part of the book that changed a lot. Because in the original version of this, I went full on grief mode. Also because as the book evolved, both of my grandparents passed away. So I was like in the thick of grieving. So for me, I was also trying to figure out what words could put to experience like the amount of loss I was feeling. And I remember my editor coming back and being like, this is a little too heavy. I'm like, it's like too on the nose of like death. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm like definitely dumping a little bit of my own experience right now, like grief dumping. And how do I, again, pull it back to, you know, grief and loss is like something every single one of us will have to experience at one point or another. If you're lucky to love someone, you will feel loss. And I think like the way of trying to finesse the words where it felt poetic, but you understood that like this is what it's alluding to. It was really hard to find that like middle ground rather than just saying like, and when they pass, or when they're like, I don't know. And like when we hold them breathe out their last breath, I think that's what I wrote at the time, in the first version. Like when we watched like their lungs, it was like very visceral. Because it's what I saw, you know, like when you hold their hand and you watch their last breath, like something like that. But going from something that was like a little bit more intense to something just like, oh, and even when they're no longer with us, like we stay connected. And I think Sarah did a really great job of like creating this pause. Like I love this storytelling pause where like it goes from this, you know, family scene where there's like so much happening, and then you start to see just like a little bit more of like an introduction to grieving, even through like the tears in the girl's eyes and the hugging. But then this pause just felt so necessary. Like this spoke so much louder than me saying like holding the hand as they like breathe their last breath. Like this is the silence that was created to understand, oh, someone's passing away. And Sarah, I'm curious, like for you, how you came to think to illustrate this page and this spread in this particular way, because I felt like it was so brilliant to create that pause, because it really just like further communicated to the reader, like, oh, something's different. Something's happening in the book. There's a break and it's quiet. And like, that means someone is no longer here. Yeah.
I have to touch on like, before we get into like the river scene, like this part, right? That is right before the river is like, I think at that time, I was like back in the Philippines, and it was like my aunt, so my dad's like eldest sister, she was bedridden, and like originally for here, like I drew Agong in bed essentially, and like because it was so like visceral for me, like that moment when we saw her, because like last time I saw her was like in 2016, and she was still okay, she didn't have dementia, like. And like seeing her now like in bed, it was so heartbreaking. And like those moments of like you're just like holding on to them. And like, so at first, yeah, I drew that, but then of course it's like, it's almost too real. Like I was chatting about this with like Jocelyn, like how that scene, like it's interesting to hear that like the text had to be changed, and then also like the visual changed from the bed to the couch, but like with like the chair, like it still says the same thing, just in a different way, and like just drawing them like holding on to this person. Like I thought about like just holding on to their hand, like it's really such like a visceral experience that you have when it's like near the end. But yeah, like I think it was important to, after like I did want to compose the scene where it's like when you're like, that's what you see, like you see someone's face. Like I thought it was important to show like the little girl crying, like it's tears are just like part of the experience. It's a way of showing that. And then like feeling like a warm embrace, like you don't need words, you just like need the comfort of just like somebody being there. And then like that transitioning into like the river, I think for this scene I was inspired by, to go back to my friend James, like I was inspired by his paintings. Like he did like some river paintings, and like just seeing that, you know, something like as quiet as like this scene, I think like when I read it, like I could have shown like the river, like different, like I could have done like a montage of like different textures of the river, but I thought it was important to show stillness and quietness, because like it's part of the experience, like that the stillness and the quietness that you feel, it's really loud in itself. So I think having that in there, and like you can tap into like how there's a reflection of the green in the water, and like the deepness of the blue. I think like visually, I think it says a lot with something very little. And I think caregiving is like that too. It's like you don't always show things with what you say. It's like the being in the moment.
Yeah, I love also the contrast between the peak of having all the family members under one roof, and how jarring it could be for a family member to then pass. I think that was, again, I don't know how intentional that was, Sarah, and for you also, Jocelyn, but I think it's beautifully placed, and I'm so glad that you were able to include death in some way in a children's book. I think it's so important for children to not shy away from certain themes. You can definitely talk about it in a certain way that is palatable for a child to grasp, but I'm glad that that's in here, and I'm so excited to read this to my future children. I could not be more proud and happy for you guys with the way that this book turned out. How has the release of the book been for both of you, and where do you guys go from here?
The book release has been really sweet. I think the impact has been what I hope for, and so far beyond what I hope for too. You know, we're catching up right now, where it's only been less than a month since this book has released, and already so many people have shared stories of caregiving with me when I read it, when I share it with them. Even just from the title and the illustrations on the cover, people just feel this sense of like, I can share, or like this book holds the space for me to share what I've been through or what my family has been through. And so even at the last story time that I did, you know, I have this tendency that when I'm writing kids' books, I'm also like writing to the parent as well. more than anything, the parents come up to me and they talk to me. And there was a mom just recently who came up to me and was like, oh, I'm part of the sandwich generation. Like, I'm raising my kids. And she's like wrangling them as she's talking to me. And she's like, and I'm also taking care of my parents. And she didn't have to say anything else, but like her eyes started watering up. And I just told her, I was like, I know it can be very lonely, and like hang in there. And she was like, yeah, it is. And then she started tearing up. And I was just like, wow, this is like a really beautiful thing that I had hoped that caregivers would pick up this book and, in the midst of caregiving for their child, feel less lonely and feel held themselves. And that so far seems to be the feedback that I'm getting from people, or even the bookseller that was, introducing my book before the story time. She was like, oh, I was a caregiver for my mom for 10 years. And she shared about how she wished she had had a book like this at the time so that she would feel less alone. Things have naturally, like those responses have naturally come up, which I feel really, really grateful to hold space for whenever I get to talk to someone in person or over DM or, whatever email message like that comes my way. I'm like grateful to hear the stories of care and sacrifice and joy and regrets and grief, all the things like that are mixed up in caregiving. And that's just been really sweet. So, yeah.
What a beautiful thing. What about you, Sarah? How has it been so far?
So far, it's been wonderful to see this book out now. Like I think like just the whole process of like creating a picture book. I know like both of us in our own ways, Jocelyn, like we went through a lot, like even hearing now, like you're in the thick of like caregiving, for your family, like and then to have it like come out, it's like almost like a release in a way, and like such a, like an overwhelming, like beautiful feeling to kind of like, yeah, have this book in our hands that represents like our families and have it connect with people it's really magical. I think like I actually, like when I was creating this, like I only chatted with my cousin about like her experiences because the little girl was like reminded me of her. Like I like drew inspiration from her with that. And then like I recently talked to my Tita Gemma, so my cousin Sam's mom, because she was the one caregiving for my great aunt. Like I thought that was like such a meaningful conversation to kind of like surprise my aunt that like, oh yeah, this book is dedicated to you because I know like I feel you, like you're not alone. Shit, sorry. You don't know, like I think for myself, I didn't know like how hard it was for them to like go through these things and like hear that, like how at the time, like, oh shoot, sorry, I'm getting really emotional.
That's okay.
I think it's just like a beautiful piece of like art, a beautiful experience this whole book is that we created together, Jocelyn, like stemming from like your memories and how it honors them and like our families, and just being able to like be part of a project that other people can connect to is really beautiful. So
it's a time capsule that will last forever. And I will say, for me, I reflect on caregiving often, daily, multiple times a day, especially with the work that I do. I'm always reflecting and thinking about that time, but there were parts of this book that spoke to me in ways that it brought up thoughts that I've never really thought about. Like towards the end of the book, when you talk about how a loved one's care continues to flow even though they're no longer here. And I immediately thought of my grandmother, who she passed away 2 years ago. And I still think, like the moment that I read that, I started thinking of all of the things that my grandmother left behind that continue to care for my family and I, whether it was through the lessons that she taught us or the things that she made for us that are still here. And this book was such a hug for me. And although I'm not a parent in the sandwich generation, I think this book, we call it a children's book, but this is like, this really did a lot for me. And I'm so excited to see children, well, I'm not going to see children read this, but to know that this is out there and for children to be able to read this. I just know that if I were to read a book like this as a child, I would have related to it so much. And you guys are such great storytellers, and just an amazing, amazing job to both of you. I'm so honored that you guys were willing to sit with me to chat for a little bit about the book. And I'm so excited to see what happens after this and the projects that you guys continue to put out. And congratulations.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, it means a lot coming from you. And again, like, thank you for all the ways that you continue to share grandma and her legacy, her love, like, with so many people. You hold space for caregivers in all stages of caregiving and care grieving. And that is tough, emotional work. And also at the same time, it's very clear it's the joy of your life and it comes so naturally to you. And so, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for the ways you've supported me virtually from afar when I was in the midst of it too, without even knowing me. And yeah, always cheering you on as well.